I'd like to bring in Dahlia Scheindlin, political strategist and pollster, joining us from Florida. Dahlia, thank you for being with us. The war in Gaza, although not a defining issue perhaps, has played quite a big role in the American elections. Why do so many Americans care? Is it a matter of taxpayer money? Does it fall into identity politics? Is it part of a trend? Why?
Well, first of all, I'm sending greetings from Philadelphia, and I say, it's an important question because here in Philadelphia, you would think, in many ways, Americans often see this as a birthplace of democracy. But in, this morning, just listening, overhearing conversations around me, people were talking about Gaza and Ukraine, which you've just been discussing. I think it plays into both of the things you mentioned. Yes, it's U.S. taxpayer money, but of course, Israel and Palestine and Gaza became an incredible flashpoint issue that sort of captured the imagination of a generation of voters, and it has become, kind of the central foreign policy issue in addition to Ukraine that says something about what America's role is in the world. And I think it also scrambled the ideas that each party wanted to have of itself, particularly among Democrats. Right, Democrats, and for many of the last 10 years or so, 15 years, thought that it was clear that voters from minority groups would support them, and those minority groups kind of did, partly on the hope that America was, advancing peace around the world, and they see that America's role has been so supportive of Israel. The blanket support in terms of military, economic, and political cover, that they see America as contributing to the escalation, contributing to the war, contributing to the destruction in Gaza, and they can't find themselves in the party that they were supposed to want to support for their position at home, in terms of protecting them at home, and in terms of what they viewed as America's role abroad. And that scrambled things, especially when Trump came out with this strong message of it's a counterfactual and probably unfactual statement that the wars would not have started on his watch. But he also claims he's going to try to end them. We'll see. Nobody knows. But that has been the big dilemma for those who do place the issue at the top of their voting priorities.
So to elaborate on that, the fierce oppositions against the war for many on especially the American left has meant a significant disillusionment with the Democrats. How much do you think this war had an impact on the elections, and how many chose to perhaps go to a third option or not vote at all? How much do you think it had an impact?
I mean, it's really hard to tell at this stage. The main state where we would expect to, try to analyze that is Michigan, of course. Michigan hasn't actually been called yet. It's, I think, 95% reported and a 2-point lead for Trump. So, we'll have to do a lot of micro analysis. These are not the kinds of things you can pick up through through a single survey in the state. You'll have to really dig closely into those communities. But we do know that the Arab American vote in Michigan, based on late stage polls, was deeply split, almost even. And that Harris was running about 18 points behind where Joe Biden was in 2020. So certainly it played into the dilemma, and to the extent that that there will be a major gap between how they ended up voting this time versus last time, that is clearly the main reason. I don't think we can say just now how many of them decided not to vote, voted for Trump, or voted for a third party. But it's true that in the final stages, the main messages and dilemma that I saw among particularly Arab Americans or anybody who was, prioritizing opposing the war in Gaza was whether to vote for Jill Stein if she was on the ballot. And I think that was the dilemma that many were facing. So there were numerous options: not to vote for a third party, or to vote for Trump. And some of them may have done that.
And Dahlia, just here shortly, I mean, this is a big question, but why do you think there's such a big difference between Israeli Jewish voters and Jewish American voters?
Well, this is a bit of a complicated issue. It's both sides. There are different processes going on both sides. American voters are American Jewish voters are a minority in America, and they have, historically struggled to protect minorities. They have historically supported solidarity with other minorities, and they have historically supported parties that are most likely to stand up for minorities, for those who are discriminated against, for those who are sometimes persecuted, and who face, discrimination in America. And that has been mostly oriented towards the Democratic Party, and a very strong commitment to liberal values, to civic activism, and those kinds of values that protect people in solidarity with each other. Now, in Israel, I think what we've seen over the last 10, 15 years is that Netanyahu has turned America into a partisan issue, and he has turned Israel into a partisan issue in America. But ultimately, he has spent really since 2008, since the Obama years, he has worked day and night to basically convey to Israelis that the Republicans are good for Israel and Democrats are bad. America has become a partisan issue in Israel. We saw it in recent polling showing that 65% of Israelis would have think Trump is better for Israel's interests. And that's despite the fact that Biden gave so much unlimited support to Israel that you see that it cost him or Harris in the U.S. election. So it's a real contradiction. But the blanket level support, the complete blank check that America gave Israel under the Biden administration, frankly, is weirdly lost on Israelis.
Interesting. Dahlia Scheindlin, thank you very much for your input.